and welcome everybody. Come in, class is about to start. Drop your backpacks. Today is going to be a lot of fun. Feel free to just pop in the chat and let us know how business is going right now. Really, we're going to be talking about capital today. We're going to be talking about underwriting, a lot of the things that you guys bring questions about every day. And I think this time we have really brought in somebody that's going to just give that authority and professional opinion so that you guys can really start to make decisions on your deals. Guys, this is the Land Pilot Q&A. We have it every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. You can just put it on your calendar that it's going to be a good time. And we definitely like to keep it fireside chat mode. So please engage with us. I like to see your faces. I like to see your expressions. I like to see you ask questions in the comments and all of that fun stuff. See, Jean's smiling. It makes me smile. And that's exactly what we want here. Guys, we have Chris Duff in the house. He has been full-time in land since 2019 and now the managing partner of Sirius Land Capital. I hear you are like underwriter pro 1,000 times over. Give us the rundown, Chris.
Appreciate that intro here, Corianne, and excited to be here tonight with you all. I see some familiar names in the audience, some new ones here. I was just on with AJ's community the other day. Gene, you might have been on that one, so I'll try to keep it fresh. But yeah, in terms of background, like Corianne mentioned, my two partners and I have been in land for several years now. Initially started off just doing direct flips, but we've been exclusively funding deals for a bit over a year, probably a year and a half since we converted fully over, and that business has been growing exponentially. We're much better, just focusing on the funding side. And we're also in the midst of launching a software business that will augment the ability to underwrite and perform diligence on land. So I've have a number of other podcast appearances and so forth. So if you want like more detailed background on myself and the way my company is structured, or general strategies and so forth, all those videos and interviews are linked on our website, seriousland.capital. Feel free to check us out if you're interested in getting any deals funded. We have an FAQ there. We also have the website landfunding.partners that includes us, and then in our understanding, all the other funding partners in the land industry. So even if you don't want to work with us or want to consider your other options, we try to put that together as well. And then for that software product that we're working on, landpricer.ai is where you could sign up for updates and be a potential beta user. We're anticipating launching before the end of this year. Finally, the last plug, just for other areas that you might be able to get more info and practice on underwriting. I do host this Land Daily Diligence, now weekly call. It used to be bi-weekly, but my schedule's gotten too crazy. It's now switched to just Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central, though the recordings are always available. So if you have any deals that you want reviewed, whether you want funding or not, I'm happy to review them live accordingly. So that is a free resource available to the land industry. So I didn't really have anything structured for this chat here. I can kind of expound on due diligence principles, hours on end here. So I'm happy to kind of go on in some of the latest tactics and so forth, or questions that we get asked pretty routinely here. But because we have a pretty good showing of individuals here tonight, figured I'd at least start off, if anybody has some kind of burning questions, more generally related to diligencing land deals, or if you wanted to share some deals that you're working on currently, not sure what the numbers are, happy to live review them as well if that would be of highest value. So I'm here to serve as a primary resource for you all during this hour here, and want to help in the most targeted manner possible. So figured I'd open it up initially to see what the audience might think.
I much prefer those methods where it's like my brain is open because you always have those rolling questions. Guys, go ahead and just raise your hands so we can kind of get a lineup if you have some underwriting questions or you have a address, just so we can kind of go one by one. That would make it a lot easier. If you need to know how to raise your hand, down at the bottom, you click react, and then I think it's recognize hand gestures and raise hand. Oh, come on, y'all. You make me comp your stuff all the time, and I'm not the pro at it. You need Chris. Adam,
Okay,
what you got?
Adam, yeah, I see. It's always brave to be the first one here. Let's kick us off.
All right. Yeah, so I hadn't heard of your service, and I just went to your website and entered into uh, to be on the list for beta. Tell me more about it, like the capabilities of your platform and what does it bring to the table? What's the goal?
Yeah, so the goal of this software really is, and anybody who's been in the land industry for a while here, when you're underwriting properties, I mean, it's a constant learning process, right? It's probably the skill that's hardest to master in this space, especially when you operate in multiple different geographies. Like there's always something new to be learning. I mean, we diligence thousands of properties and we're still running into, key hurdles. I haven't seen this before. And there's a mixture of a science and an art to it. Houses, multifamily, the markets are far more efficient. The numbers and the math that you can look into to assess proper purchase price is easier to do. That doesn't say, yeah, you can't get caught in a bad deal, but with land, as we well know, oftentimes it's a far less efficient market, especially when you're outside of those kind of cookie cutter infill lot markets. I might be thinking about like Lee County or Charlotte County, Florida, for instance. I think every flipper has probably encountered those lots at some point in their career within this industry. But for the vast majority, looking at rural anything, the data is oftentimes just not that good. And case in point, we do know that there's scraping tools out there and so forth, but plenty of times those can be easily misled just because it's reliant on the data that it's actually scraping from. And sometimes, yeah, Redfin, Zillow, it's excellent. You're always going to get the right APNs, the right location, but half the time that I'm looking up properties and trying to comp, the pins are incorrect, APNs are incorrect, pictures are incorrect. So I'm always having to go back to Land ID and reconfirm the underlying comp characteristics in relation to my subject property to really ensure that I'm comparing apples to apples before I'm making a pricing determination. So our thought within this was, I do these live diligences all the time, or constantly doing it internally for offline deals. How do I take the process that we've built within our own company, kind of like taking my brain and inserting it into a software? That's the primary goal of the product here. And we're going in a different direction than those scraping tools that already exist here, because again, in my opinion, oftentimes they're not that accurate. So what we're doing initially with this product is trading time for accuracy. It might take you 15, upwards of an hour, 15 minutes upwards of an hour to assess a property, to really land at the proper price there. But we know that the product won't succeed unless we are really, really certain of the accuracy. That being said, you all know that, there's only so much you can do on aerials, and tracking on Redfin and Zillow. So, we'll probably cap out at roughly like 75% accuracy in terms of the, anticipated purchase price for the property. But we'll also be wanting to spit out a summary of bullet points for, okay, we're not sure about utilities yet, have to call, have to get a site visit, there might be junk on the property, et cetera. So we're going to provide an extra list that can refine the price further offline outside of the tool. But the tool will serve as, very strict guideposts on the proper questions that you need to be asking as you go through Land ID, Redfin, Zillow, et cetera, in order to arrive at that correct purchase price. So, I've already spent a significant sum of, personal finances building this thing out to get it done right, because, it needs to be accurate more than anything. But that's the underlying goal of the project, both for us to use internally. It helps me turn my art more into a science. That's always the number one thing that we're trying to get better at, so you can improve consistency, but also offer that to the whole land industry writ large.
Well, it's compelling, and I mean, it sounds interesting. When I got into this a couple of years ago, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was in a coaching program, and then I ended up hiring some virtual assistants. They didn't really know anything yet. They're, Filipinos. So what I ended up doing was somebody got me into priced, and that was like, okay, this gives you kind of a fuzzy baseline, and then we can kind of run our data through that and get that baseline to see how close are we on or off with my team. And now we've been training and doing a lot more work, and we've used a lot of other services like parcel review is great, and this and that. So this is kind of a different idea here to me, because let's just say I might have about 8,000 mailers going out next week, and the phones are going to explode when we do. And then, that means there's going to be normally we send out about 3,000 at a 2 to 3 a drop, but this is going to be a big drop. So it does, kind of become important to be able to leverage your time and also have your team being able to handle the workload that's coming in. So it's compelling, and I definitely like a walkthrough at some point if we ever get a chance, because I'm in the early stages of developing something internally myself for our business systems and things like that. But this is the first I've heard of it. So, like I said, I'd like to know more. That's
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, that's always good feedback to hear, from folks within the industry that this might be valuable. That's exactly who we're building it for. So, and we've been in this a long time as well too. So yeah, totally get it that, some of the other solutions have their, viability here. This is just a different approach. That might, fill in some holes, since again, just to mention, in terms of the metrics that we see, out of all the deals that we get, I'm probably throwing out 90 to 95% of them within the first cut. Most of that is thrown out because of pricing. Like that's still the biggest struggle for the vast majority of land investors, whether novice or more experienced. Like it's a hard thing to do. So to help shore that up a lot more is really the primary goal here. But yeah, I'm seeing the chat become a bit more active
Yeah.
here.
I've got a lineup of people for you, but before we
Okay.
hop off this particular subject, I do want to already make the invitation that once that's live, you come back and you give us the whole tutorial, because it does fire up the chat, because we want to save time. We want to make more money. This sounds like a solve. Seth,
Okay.
who is
Sounds
great
good.
at subdivisions and is actually coming back on October 3rd to talk about subdivisions, is curious if this will be able to kind of underwrite based off of subdivide comps on how you might be able to divide a parcel.
Yeah, so we're building it to be able to assess any vacant land parcel in the US. Ambitious goal, but the way we're designing the software, without getting into too much detail, like it gets heady really quickly. but there's just a
Yeah.
whole bunch of if then else statements, certain logic flow that's going to be asking, is there a possible subdivide? Can we start considering what the child parcels might look like from an acreage perspective? So that's all going to be built in, because we do get sent a lot of possible minor subdivides to us often. So we want to make sure that that's going to be covered as a possible review case too.
Awesome. All right, I've got a line for you now. Ed is first, and then Chelsea, and then Justin. Ed looks like he's got a place in Tennessee to comp. Feel free to unmute yourself, Ed, and have a chat about it. Can you see it in the chat on the
and
side,
I'm
Chris?
happy to share my screen so I can live review it as well. We actually just bought a property in Coffee County. It's we got like 2 full price offers. I don't like the contingencies on it, but it's a very active market. So you're probably in the right place here.
So I sent an offer, and I don't know why only one property showed up in it, but she actually has 2. They're right next to each other. They're 5 acres apiece. And the comps range anywhere from, like, there's a comp down the street that's like 10 acres for 35, which is really low. And then there's another comp that's a little bit further away that's like 5 acres for like 150. So they kind of vary all over the place. But it's in a nice area. There's it's about an hour south of probably maybe an hour and 15 minutes south of Nashville, probably like 30 minutes south of Murfreesboro. And there's a lot of houses on that road that it's on. So yeah, she owns that one and the one to the north of that.
Okay. And what did you offer for it?
I don't know how I got this price, but I totally messed it up big time. So I need to go back and renegotiate. Somehow through my pricing, the pricing thing I used, it told me to offer like 12.5 an acre or something, whatever. Well, it comes up to like 64,000 for 5 acres, which is really, really high. I don't know how.
So you're at
when
like
I checked it, when I was checking it, for the before I sent it out, in general, it looked okay. But then when I got this one back in the mail and I started looking at it, I was like, that seems way high. So especially if that comp like a mile away, 35 for, for 35,000 for 10 acres. But if you go on the other side of 24, then there's, they're way more expensive over there.
Got it. Understood. So I'll use this one as an example just to kind of show my general process, and I'll try to keep us moving here, to be mindful of time accordingly. But land ID is always my number one, going to that before I'm even starting to look at comps, because I want to assess the property characteristics first and foremost, because that's already going to be telling me whether I might have some superior characteristics, inferior characteristics. That's probably the number one thing that I see causing the primary issues for pricing mismatches that I was mentioning earlier, is comparing apples to oranges, or not accounting for certain multipliers or certain detractors on your subject property. So whenever I'm pulling into land ID for this, I like to use the aerial or the Google base maps, because it tends to be a little bit better resolution. Then as a default, anywhere in the country, outside of parts of Florida, I'm always going to have contour lines on, FEMA floodplain, and wetlands. Those are my default overlays that I'm using basically every time. And we know that, Tennessee probably is going to be pretty hilly here. So I'm going to turn on my 3D, really start to assess this. And there's definitely some contour issues here. I've got wet plains right where there's kind of the flatter area. It's encouraging that there appears to be an old mobile home on it. It's a little unclear to me whether that was
I think it's a storage shed, I think she said.
Got it. So
I think she's going to take it away.
Right. So that makes it a little bit more questionable there. You know, I can see at least across the street, there's a house, but, you know, it's not in the dip. It's not next to the wetlands. And this is actually a perfect example to utilize because, you know, a lot of folks, they might, you know, especially because we're in a rural area, right? So we're assuming it's going to be septic. You know, sewer is rarely viable outside of, you know, city limits, you know, infill lots. So they might see, okay, there's wetlands creeping through here. I should be able to get septic on either side of this, a little bit clear, a little bit flat, shouldn't be too much of an issue. So this is where I'm always going to be wanting to check soil overlays. I'm checking soil regardless of any property looking at, but especially when there's, you know, any type of key contour issues, wetlands in the area, because that can usually tell me if there's going to be some additional issues for a septic piece before even sending somebody out there. So clicking on this one, yeah, I wish the soil overlays were better color coded in terms of, you know, viability, but, you know, usually you're like, okay, yeah, the green is good. Not always. You have to click on it and really check out, you know, the kind of subclass here. So whenever I'm clicking on the soil overlay, you know, if I'm getting excess water and it's right next to wetlands, we know a creek is going right through here, that's giving me a lot of concern, because even though my wetlands is, you know, very, you know, thin going through this area, this whole area is probably going to be very difficult to fit a septic on, especially conventional. Maybe you can get aerobic system, mound set up, but then you're going to have to build in, you know, an extra 10 to 15 grand, maybe more, of possible you know, price that the buyer is going to have to account for if they want to build on it. So that is making me more mindful here of like, yeah, this might be tricky to build on. Secondarily, I'm going to follow that pathway and see, okay, are there any improvements, houses within that same type of soil? So over here, yes, okay. That is reducing my concern now, because I can see same street that you know, people have built on. Though you always have to be cautious too, because again, it can be confusing. You know, sometimes it's the same color, but the actual soil type changes. That you can see it's a PA here versus an HS. So you really have to be careful and not rush yourself when you go through this, because like this PA is not excess water over here, whereas you know, it's still a continuation from that dark green mode. At the same time, yeah, I'm going to turn that off. Okay, yeah, wetlands is still close to the road. So these ones are probably a little bit better positioned than the subjects, because, you know, I'm going to have to get a longer driveway in to where those storage buildings are at. You know, it's just, it's not going to be the most ideal to build on. Looking at this, and probably certainly going to want to get a perk soil test professionally done on this one. I'm always looking at the parcel tax information too. You know, okay, we can see that it sold roughly 10 years ago. And I'd also be cautious here too, right? My mortgage amount showing it's due in 2030. Does this guy have an active mortgage on the property? We don't know that yet. So that would need to be checked with title as well, to see if there's still an underlying lien on the property. If there's not a mortgage and it just shows, you know, price sold, I'm usually not too concerned unless it was within the last 5 years. If it was, then, you know, I'm going to be extra cautious about my possible purchase price, because, you know, is there an underlying issue with the property? How motivated is the seller going to be to even work with me? Those are very open questions here. So as you can see, like, I assessed all of this from the characteristic side before I'm even getting into a comps, because I'm already thinking, yeah, there's some possible issues I'm going to have to deal with on this one, even from mortgage side, et cetera. But when I'm going into Redfin, I'm going to already start thinking, yes, this is probably going to be a resi property. Possible rec, you know, 10 acres is probably minimal that you might need to possibly hunt or something on this property, but it doesn't look too great from a hunting side. Usually if I'm looking at hunting properties, I want to see creeks more towards the tree lines and all that. Maybe you get some game there. That would be more questionable. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the actual comping process. Most vacant lots aren't going to have address, so I'm going to pull one in nearby. I prefer Redfin for sold comps. Generally, better UI usually has better quality data, especially APNs. Zillow I prefer for active comps because you get the views and saves to account for. And I also use that Land Insights Chrome plugin. It just makes it a little bit easier for auto going to land selection. It'll show you some PPA overlays on the comps that show up as well. For lot size, yeah, we're looking at roughly 10 acres. I might go down to like 4 here. Usually I'm starting at a bit of a wider range and I can narrow accordingly. Rural areas probably not going to have much land sold, so maybe I'll start upwards of like 40 and then scale down from there. Always going to my solds first. I don't like going beyond a year. Generally, ideally the closer the possible. If I really can't find anything, I might look for, within the last 2 years or so and still try to get, because you can find some comps that sold within 13 months lagging that still show up under 2 years. So it's possible to do that sometimes. So this is probably the comp that you were noting here, Ed. Yeah, 5 acres just last month for 120.
Yeah,
but
that was it. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm always want to look in that property description. Like, is there anything that might throw me off or might be more advantageous in relation to the subject? Minimal restrictions. So it already perks, has a septic permit. That's going to be very advantageous for the property, partially fenced. City water's available. We don't know whether it's available on the subject. So I have that info there. Then I'm going down to check sales history. So this is pretty tricky here, right? So it was definitely taken off and a new broker came into this one. Actually, okay, wait, so this is $799. That one's probably irrelevant here, but this one, okay, they started at 150 August of last year. Took a year to sell. That's, big warning sign for this market here. And I always go to the pending date because that's truly the on market time. Still was about a year, a little bit less than that. But you can see all these relisted, listing removed. What was going on with this property? Something strange here, but and they had to discount it by 150, almost 20% there roughly. So we want to account for that. And yeah, 23,000 sold price per acre. But then I'm always going to want to compare the characteristics to my subject. So I'm pulling the APN and finding this. Okay, yeah, like you mentioned, it abuts that property, but I can see I have a nice clearing to work with. Interesting. Okay, yeah, so big dip toward the back, but I have a nice little buildable area right towards the road here. I'm not dealing with the wetlands. Soil, yeah, my soil looks a bit better as well, not dealing with that excess water. And we already know this one perks too. So this is going to be a superior lot, certainly. But again, it took forever to sell. So can I expand it out a little bit more? 150 in March of this year for 5 acres. Okay, exact survey coming, nothing too crazy here. This one pended a lot quicker, still a little bit of a discount. So then I'm going to probably be assuming that the quality of the property from a characteristics perspective is better. Okay, yeah, and it looks like there's even like a full house on it. So this is just kind of an irrelevant property unless, so they chopped it up. Okay, never mind. So they subdivided off this portion, but it's still a lot more clear. Like that's and super flat for this part. So that's a vastly superior property. So I mean, we could expand this out a little bit, but this is already, again, for the sake of time here, where my mind would be going. I'd probably search for a few other comps. Actually, we can check for actives really quick and always under contract. What might be pending there? Okay, 165 for 6 acres, on for 2 weeks, trying to move at 27 an acre. So that's like roughly the same. And this one has some improvements too. So you already know you're going to have to undercut this property because you have inferior characteristics. This one, yeah, is a little bit more cleared here, has some type of improvements on the property, was perk tested, I mean, 6 years ago, but yeah, it still should be relatively solid. Water line runs through it. So if I'm looking at this one that took forever to sell and I'm doubling the size of it, okay, 23,000 sold price per acre. That took a year. I probably want to undercut the heck out of this one. I might be looking at like 15 grand an acre, roughly. So if I'm there, trying to, yeah, I mean, easy math, right? 150,000. So then if I'm going to make an offer, I would cut that in half. I know you basically offered almost double that already. So, it might be a bit of negotiation.
Well, I did 65 for 5 acres, and then she told me she had that other one. So yeah, if I doubled it, it'd be like right below be like 130. So yeah. We can do
So
that.
I would anchor all 10 acres at roughly 75K and just see if you're in the neighborhood for that. If the seller won't budge at all, you can take all this ammo back to her, say, hey, like the wetlands, soil, etc., just not as ideal, to try to get her down. Otherwise, if you can't get that margin there, then we always tell our potential clients, hey, try to get under option contract, see if you can double close it. But from an equity buy, doesn't make sense. So, but that's where I would start there. If there is some traction with the seller, I'd find the realtor, probably this person here, since they just sold, recently, or the other one here, and try to get them out to the property, assess further, nail down your pricing a little bit more, and go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much for the overview. That was an excellent overview. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Ed. Hopefully it works out for you.
So you said you had 2 that you just sold in that same county?
Well, we just funded one like a week ago. I mean, it's a way better quality like flat, some storage buildings. It's a different type of property, but Tennessee, as we well know, is one of the most popular flipping states. So there's definitely a lot of deals there, a lot of activity. Okay, so moving down the list here. So Chelsea was asking, what do you think about land like this? And I'm just pulling up my chat. So worthless without that square in the middle. Okay, very nice aerial. So flag lot, yeah, I'm always cautious about those. I'm going to want to discount that a little bit. It looks like even my neighbors here, I can't quite tell, might be a little, yeah, especially off to this side here, a little bit junky. I'm always cautious about we've gotten tied up in deals where, the neighbors are just, a bit of an eyesore, can cause some problems. And those properties just tend to take longer to sell. So, even when I discount, even when you think you're undercutting, like I would undercut even further than you think reasonable when you're dealing in areas like this, especially if all your other comps are not kind of near the junky type of neighborhoods here. But that would definitely be a concern for me. I know it's a little bit tucked away. You're getting this nice aerial view. You can't see it as much from the street, but nevertheless, that would be something to be concerned about. For this one, I wouldn't necessarily be concerned if I'm missing that landlocked piece in the middle. The primary issue is that is there some easement to that? Like, is whoever owns that piece, do they have legal access to get to that lot? Or were they ever using it in the past there?
They do. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Yeah, they do. They have legal access to that lot. It's not landlocked. There's a driveway, like a dirt path that goes back to there.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that I would be more cautious with, especially when you have a flag lot for the subject anyway. So they're going to have to be sharing access regardless. And I'm not sure what the terrain is. It's hard to tell on aerials how hilly this this might be where the best area is to build, a house. Would it be here? Would it be back here? I'm not sure precisely looking at this, but depending on how close they are to this area, especially if those owners are using that area, could detract from the property a lot. Wouldn't fully dissuade me from going after it if you can really nail down the price. But yeah, I would be extra cautious in that scenario.
Okay, what do you think? Do you think that redividing it into like 3 lots might improve the saleability?
Would be dependent on the market without looking at it and really assessing the child parcel market. That's always, that's when people send me again possible subdivides all the time. But when you actually dive into the PPA, price per acre, usually, especially for smaller lots like this, you're not going to get that much of a bump on your pricing there. And when we're always thinking about velocity of capital as land flippers, right? So, especially if we do 3 lots here, it's only a 9.3 acre piece. So, what might you do? Like roughly 3.1 acres each, maybe one a little bit larger. Again, I'm not sure what the child parcel market might be. Plus, if you're doing a subdivide without significant road frontage like this, you're either going to have to continue that pathway on. I'm not sure how far it goes back. That's going to be an extra cost for that. You're going to run into adverse selection because probably the person with this area is going to justify kind of the highest price. The ones further back are going to be less valuable. Plus, you have to account for this acreage back here that's more worthless, and especially if it doesn't look like it connects to more road. Maybe it does connect to a road. I can't tell from this area aerial view here. But especially, just looking at parcels like this, I would be very, very skeptical about possible subdivide here. Rarely the math works out in that favor, especially for smaller parcels like this. Again, accounting for opportunity cost, timing, never know when the market's going to shift. We know it's a wild market out there. So I'm always thinking about, even if I have to sacrifice a little bit of possible full upside, I'm thinking about my timing and how fast can I get this thing to move to recycle and keep my IRR up for my business.
Sure. One more quick question I'd love to ask you is, how cautious are you when approaching real estate agents if you don't yet own the property?
Usually I'm not particularly concerned with it. And, my business is a little bit different because I don't interact directly with sellers. Clients bring us deals and we just provide the capital. We provide a lot of expertise too, but we're not dealing with the sellers. So, depending on the relationship the client has with the seller, if they really kind of trust it, great, that's fine. Usually you're not going to run into circumvention here. Agents are looking for business, right? And if they, screw over, a reputable land investor, like we have like a very well-known brand and so forth, if they want to screw us over, we'll make sure not to work. We won't bring them more business. We'll make mention of that. So there's a lot of incentives for them not to be bad apples in regard to that. And frankly, a lot of these real estate agents aren't sitting on a bunch of cash to be buying these properties anyway. So that's just my thinking with it. I mean, we use realtors 99% of the time, and we prefer higher priced properties anyway. If you're doing a 3K buy, sell for 10, whatever, you can probably self-close that. We prefer doing 50K plus purchase prices. So, with hefty purchases like that, and especially when we're operating nationally, I really want expert boots on the ground before I'm buying any property. So that's just a risk of the business, but we've never run into a circumvention issue like that.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. Going down, I see Justin, you have had your hand up for a while here. So if you want to jump in.
Yeah, hey Chris, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So I had a property come across my desk earlier. I put the longitude and latitude in the chat. I don't know if you can see that in there.
Yes. Yep.
So I was
you don't have the
confident.
APN?
I can read it off to you.
Yeah, and what state are we in?
This is in North Carolina.
Okay.
I can just put it in the chat for you real fast.
What county?
This is in Macon County.
Eight, 2, 5, 6, 4. All right. Infill lot. Always easier to assess those generally. So let me go ahead, get all the basics set up again. All right. So this is the lot in question. Guessing my contour is not going to be ideal here. Oh yeah, I'm on a cliff. Or not, I mean, it might be a little egregious, but it's not an easy build, that's for sure. And it looks like seller lives right next door.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
that's actually like just a vacation home for him. He bought this lot as like a buffer lot. He's owned it for quite some time now, but he said if the right price came along, he would be interested in selling it. I was trying to look for comparable properties in the area, but I couldn't really find any. So I was hoping I could kind of get some insight from you, see if you could
yeah,
help
and I
me out a
keep
little bit.
going. Okay, so there is a street going in between this. It's a little hard to tell from the um tree cover here. I'm
Yeah,
just going
so
to
he
assume
lives
there.
across the street in that little like horseshoe kind of swoop you see in the bottom of your screen there.
Yeah.
That's actually a road that runs along right there, and so it's across the street from him is this infill lot.
Okay.
And it's a gravel road.
Got it. So good to note there. Yeah, there could be a nice view, certainly. Taking a look here, especially in these hilly terrains, this is another thing where I'm always, possibly skeptical before I start, really comping it out. Is that okay? We can see, especially when you have, somebody vacation home or whether they live next door. Usually, they're going to be taking the more advantageous lot. So if they're trying to sell this other one, probably is not as valuable in the first place. Otherwise, they would have built on that to start. So I'm always cautious about those opportunities to purchase here, just because usually the seller's not going to be as motivated, and usually they might be trying to sell you a lemon. And in this case here, especially in these hilly communities, it can shift in terms of what might be buildable or what might be valuable for possible buyers, just accounting for elevation here. So like I'm looking at possible other lots that have this straight down slope from the street. And is anybody else building on a very similar type of contour? Up here we can see they kind of have nice buildable areas right on the tip top. This one would be a little bit on a down slope. Actually, way better views on that side. So that's something to note. This is a little bit downslope there. Yeah, not that much because it's a little less on this side here. So now, like, I'm assuming this is kind of like HOA, vacation home community. Yeah, we see these all the time, and you get, huge days on market inventory. So I'm not really seeing another house, but maybe kind of this one that is on a similar type of slope. Even that might be a little bit more flat there, without having, of course, a site visit's going to be critical, but this looks pretty awful steep compared to the other built lots. So I'm going to be extra cautious before I'm diving into Redfin here. But with enough info, let's go ahead, plug this in. I'm also looking at how far out am I from the major cities? Okay, so this is far west North Carolina. Yes, super rural. So let's go ahead and try to suss this one out. And we are looking at 0.65 roughly. So I'm going to go down to like 1/4 acre, probably nothing smaller than that, and upwards 4 acres. To start with, we'll go to my solds. Okay, so this 244, that's probably lakefront. That's not going to be relevant. Yeah, that's just going to be a totally different valuation. 245, this one also lakefront lot, but that, are they misplacing that? Because that's not lakefront. So that this could be indicative, and we can see here too, 1.5 years almost on market to sell. Again, pretty typical for these HOA vacation home hilly areas. Like this is pretty much always the case. Oh, so interesting. It's indicating this was that lakefront one at 244. So yeah, so this is the issue, right? You get that these two lots are the same, but the pins are incorrect here. So that's why these things can be misleading, and you always have to be double checking back to the underlying land ID to really assess further. And so nothing else really in the area. Look at the wild valuations here, 250 for lakefront, 22,000 for one of these. Like, is there some type of issue? Why can't I click on this one? So yeah, full acre here. Lot will have good mountain views, yada yada yada.
So I will say that this lot is not in an HOA. It's actually just outside the community. So I don't know. I feel like that would bring the value down a little bit. I don't know if I'm correct on that, but
this one that I'm looking at here.
yeah, the original, yep. The original one I brought you, yeah.
The subject is outside. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one is pretty comparable as well from contour, maybe a little worse road frontage, but arguably there's a better buildable area. If you could really get a driveway down there, this is probably better to build on. View is very similar. So yeah, again, you can see, and 12K over here too. Like this is again just like, yeah, you can have like great value on these lakefront, and then the value just collapses for anything else in there. So and this is even a larger lot than the other one. Like this 12K, what are we looking at here? But this is almost an acre as well. And 14, wow, took over three years to sell something so cheap. Yeah, again, I'm always skeptical about these communities because usually you get really, really long hold times. Market is not that active. Yeah, and this is fairly similar. This one's more of an upslope, so a little bit different. But yeah, the other one might be a little bit better in terms of comping. And then, okay, my under contracts, pendings, nothing really. So yeah, I'm always going to have to undercut the existing market here too. Yeah, 25, been on market for almost half a year, 15,000 for this one, almost half a year as well. So yeah, I'd probably be thinking kind of closer to this. Maybe you could get a little over 20 grand for it. I'd be thinking 10 to 15 to exit this one, especially again, if you're just competing in a tricky market like this, long hold times looking at it, you really have to stand out. Otherwise, just move on from it. So, and to encourage realtors to work on stuff so cheap, usually I would look to probably self-close, anything like that. Save yourself some dollars, and from a relative perspective, the closing costs are going to eat more into your margin anyway, especially going through title and so forth here. So I probably wouldn't buy a lot that lot you were looking at like for more than 5 grand max.
Yeah, I think I offered him like 2,500 bucks, and my plan was to push it out for like 10 grand just to get it out. Just a
Okay. Yeah. Then
quick
you're
thing.
right in
So
line there.
okay, cool. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep. So moving on. Okay, yeah, I was looking at Adam's comment. Why not buy the middle lot? Yeah, I mean, sorry, what was her name? If Chelsea could do that, great. Yeah, it's just going to be a different negotiation. But you never know. Sometimes these folks with pretty terrible lots, if they already know you're on the hook for something, they're going to try to bend you over barrel there. So you got to just be careful. But yeah, if you can buy it, great. Can add a lot more value there. All right, Adam, let's take a look at your Florida deal, Brevard. Cut my teeth in that county. Very, very hard to operate there. Just for reference, I mean, we used to do Florida all the time. Usually now the actual peninsula is just too overpriced. It's all very, very hard to get deals down there. Most of the time we're getting panhandle. And yeah, I mean, Florida moves fast. It's still one of the best flipping states. It's tricky to get deals down there. So, I mean, Brevard, we haven't been able to do anything down there for years. If you're able to get something that works there, all the more power to you. So we will take a look at this one, 263612. All right. 10 acres here sold. Wow, what's going on here? Is this just lake?
Well, there's a significant amount of it, but there is some land that's on US 1, and they've proposed a lot of different type of it's a challenging piece, but basically they mined this for sand and left that strip, which could be anything from maybe an RV park, an assisted living facility. It could even be like a wakeboard park or something like that. Like what to do with it. And I have it under contract. It was appraised in November 22. It was appraised at 525. I have it under contract for 450 and listed for 6. And
what type of
so
activity is it getting if you're already listed? I mean, I can just find this right now,
it's
but
well, I haven't actually logged in to check on it in this last week or so. But I haven't seen a lot of activity or heard any activity about it yet. And I just want to know, am I like way out of range, or it's not
so I'm not even seeing it here. First off, maybe it's unusual if it's on MLS to not be on Redfin. But possibly it didn't get listed there.
It's a land pilot deal. It's in the system.
Okay, where are we at here again? Where are we? Bonaventure 509 Viera. Okay, I need to replug in. I'm getting lost here. Give me an address that works. Yes, I mean, on market data is always the best, right? So I want to default to that. For sale. It's not showing up unless it's just an incorrect pin. Yeah, not there either. Yes, I'm not sure you can include in the chat the active on market link there, but yeah, knowing how long it's been on market, view set like that's going to help me a lot.
Well, it's been we listed it. Well, I listed with Land Pilot, and I went in the portal and it said it was listed about a month or two ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I
so
mean,
they said they had it with a broker.
Sorry, I
don't
wasn't
know
paying
the broker.
attention.
I don't have the
I might be
broker
able to pull those for you.
if you can, please.
yeah, just to find whatever, Adam's active listing is here. Ideally, the Zillow link here, because then it can, provide.
It's an oddball property with could be right for the right buyer, but it's not a it's a more complex deal. That's why I would love a little bit of expertise and a review on it, and just get your general feedback.
Yeah, so let's just assume that, okay, it's been up for a month, hasn't gotten any hits. Probably by that point, I'm thinking it's overpriced, especially commercial properties with really kind of unique characteristics like this is going to be tricky anyway here. And I'm assuming you didn't do an equity purchase, like just have an option contract with that type of margin to work with, 450 for 600. Yeah, it would make sense, at least try to market it accordingly here. But to me, just jumping back to the principles, I would be thinking about usable land here. So we know it's 10 acres. I'm assuming it includes this too. So like that bumps us closer to 12.
They had a couple of concepts. The guy that's trying to sell it to me, he moves earth and stuff like that. So they had a couple of concepts, one being a kind of a nightclub on the water, maybe an adult living facility. They had basically like condos along the right side or uprise, over the water. So there isn't a lot of land there, that's true. And so but it is on, it's on a major street and very, right across from the water. So they were there was a nightclub, it's a tiny home, storage concept, like storage units down the row. So, considering a multitude of uses, there's a couple of it's that whole complex right there. I wanted to acquire the Stickrath property just south of that, and we haven't yet, but if we did, it would give me like a nice little chunk.
Yeah. That definitely would add a lot of value here. Like I'm just looking at this when I get it. Yeah, some of the concepts, but it's also the seller's motivated, right? He wants to offload this thing, working with you
Of
to
course, he's
market it. Like especially, I mean, that's a high price point too in a commercial.
Yeah.
And I'd only be looking at usable land here. So we're thinking this like roughly 12. So without even doing some of the area here, like I'm thinking usable is probably closer to like 2 acres.
Yeah, I have a great relationship with the seller, so I can go back and just say, hey, that's what it is. And if I need to renegotiate the price point, but I just would love to.
Oh, I think we lost
Yeah,
you.
frozen up there. Yeah, no, I mean, from an assessment perspective, besides looking at those characteristics here, assessing commercial, again, people send me this, and I've gotten caught up in a couple commercial deals that we thought were going to be very, very solid, and they sit forever. So you just have to be extra careful in trying to pursue these properties, especially when they have inferior characteristics like this, and we're not getting very solid comps in the area. So because it's harder to figure out where these commercial ones, LoopNet, you can use that, but it's not very good for indicating like what might got sold and so forth. Usually it's only like for actives, like it's not that user friendly. So for something like this, if I'm just going to try to assess what might have been listed on Redfin, first I would go back, whoever is managing the MLS here, like figure out why isn't this on Zillow, Redfin, et cetera, because that's going to get a lot of eyeballs, particularly Zillow, even for commercial properties. So that would be probably my number one question to ask for this property here. But then I would be going back to look at pricing. So we know that you're looking like for roughly 600 some odd thousand. And if I go higher, I know we're in South Florida, so the exit prices are going to be higher regardless of whether it's resi or commercial. And a lot of oceanfront right here as well. But I'm going to go upwards of like 250,000. So that's all going to be ocean, like direct ocean access from there. And I'm really not seeing anything closer in this area that might indicate, even along Route 1. Okay, let's take a look what happened here. So this looks like a farm.
It's really
and-
difficult for this particular
Yeah.
one comp it. So if
And
you're
I
the-
want
Yeah,
you to reach out to me tomorrow because I actually have feedback from our underwriter and sales team. So I think there's a larger conversation here on, why is it not on Zillow, and two, the pricing in general.
okay.
Yeah, and let's just like really roughly consider this just for comparison sakes here. So we saw that this like 9-acre that's clearly a lot more superior sold, was listed July and sold in November. So that's quite fast there. But if we think we only have like roughly 2 usable acres, and clearly there's a lot more going on here, so I'm just going to discount even more. But let's just take in what my anticipated price per acre is going to be. So that was like almost 200,000. Let's just cut that in half in terms of like attractiveness for a potential buyer here. So if I'm looking at like 100,000 times, again, like roughly 2, we'll even be generous and say it's like 2.5, then I might be thinking exit price is closer to 250 for the parcel that you have. So then, if you need to get margin for the seller, even if you're wholesaling it, he has to be willing to back down a lot more. You can just sit on market forever here, but we're taking a look. And even if we had or we were using the price per acre that this property got, which was roughly 200,000, right? But still, the usable acreage is only 2, maybe 2.5. So then we're looking at 500,000 as the full exit price. In which case, you have it under for 450. Maybe
Doesn't make any
50
money on
grand of gross, but net of commission and closing costs, it's barely anything, barely worth your time.
Well, I just want to get it back down to right. I mean, I'll take 30, 50 grand on the property. I got it listed for $150 over what I paid for it, but I didn't expect that. But this has to be realistic to the market conditions and actually be able to be at a price point that's movable, sellable. So, just want a second set of eyes and say, I fully figured on this one that it was over, and I would have to go back and do that. But I definitely wanted somebody who's got so much experience to really say, hey, what does this really need to be acquired for? And what can we really sell it for? And, hey, I'll take, 15, 20 grand on a deal if I could just,
froze
Oh,
up.
I feel his pain.
20 yards. Huh?
Oh, you froze for a second, and I feel your pain
Oh,
because I'm out
sorry.
here in rural internet land too.
Yeah, I'm getting AT&T fiber installed this week because I'm having horrible issues with my local provider. It's a long story.
Congrats.
I was saying it's like moving the chains in football, right? Just like in land, if the recession's up or the recession's down or the economy's up, we keep our margins, but the chains move on the property prices. So in this case, I'm trying to find how far I need to move the chains that I can turn this property, make a profit, get it under the right price and underwrite it properly so that there's some margin left. So we can put some bread on the table.
And I'm not sure which broker you're using. Obviously, you're under a listing agreement, but like if I were just starting from square one, I'd probably get the individual who sold that Palm Tree Farm or whatever, have them take a look at that one, try to assess. But you know, the way that I was like undercutting the heck out of it, just because, yeah, you have a pretty inferior lot there in relation. So I would be stunned, honestly, to get that one to sell more for than $250,000. Unless you're just willing to sit on it for like 12 months plus, which, you know, oftentimes is going to be the case with commercial.
Yeah, well, I just needed to do an exit strategy on the contract and re-get it under contract, or like I said, get rid of it and then move on, you know. So
Yep.
just want to find, where does it need to be bought at after the underwriting, and where does it need to realistically sell at? Because it is a commercial property, and I've done a lot of other comps and properties and different types, but this one, I did very well on one that had a lake on it, but it had 4.5 usable acres, right? It was 10 acres with 4.5, and I did very, very well. So in that county, I actually was in Mims, you know, Titusville. This one's a little different.
Perfect.
There's not a ton of, there's enough, and with some creativity, some imagination, and some great marketing could be done, but it got to get at the right price, and then being able to find the right buyer. And so that was like an advanced deal. I just want to make sure that, again, we're in at the right price
Thank
point,
you.
move it at the right dollar amount. And I have to go back to him and say, is what it is, Jack. You're either cutting price or we're cutting you. You're going to have it back. Good luck, you know?
Exactly, because it does take marketing dollars to have these things out there. So we have to have them at the right price. So we're going to move the chains tomorrow together on that property specifically. And I want to just be aware of Chris's time and wrap this up because he's been so generous.
I appreciate you looking at it. Thank you.
Yeah, quite welcome here. Happy to help. Yeah, I know we're a little over the hour. Actually, just here my wife coming home with my 2-year-old here. I got to help with dinner here, but yeah, this hour flew by. Hopefully, we're able to do another one here not too long from now. And yeah, very much appreciate y'all's time, and hopefully I can help or partner together in the future in some way.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
This was so useful and so helpful. We're definitely having you back. Enjoy time with your family and have a great evening. Bye, y'all.
Right, take care
See you
now.
next Thursday.
Bye.